4:12 a.m., November 19th, 2025. Port Newark, New Jersey. 38 federal agents moved through the container yard in 2 columns: night vision, suppressed communications, ballistic shields at the front. The target, Warehouse 7C, a bonded storage facility behind 2 layers of chain link fence and a reinforced steel roll door. Inside that warehouse sat 14,000 trays of microchips, every one of them fake. Total street value, $410 million. And somewhere behind that door, 3 armed guards who had no idea what was coming. This was Operation Silicon Mirage. 6 warehouses, 3 ports, 26 arrests, the largest counterfeit semiconductor bust in United States history. And it started with a single failed circuit board in Huntsville, Alabama, 6 weeks earlier. October 7th, 2025, Redstone Arsenal, Alabama. A quality assurance engineer named David Munoz sat in a testing lab at Haldane Defense Systems, a Tier 2 subcontractor specializing in inertial navigation components. Haldane held contracts with 3 prime defense manufacturers. Their components went into guidance packages for precision munitions, satellite stabilization arrays, and shipboard radar systems. Munoz was running a standard batch acceptance test on a lot of AD7124 analog-to-digital converters. These were 24-bit precision chips manufactured by Analog Devices, or at least that's what the packaging said. The lot contained 1,200 units. Haldane's internal reject threshold was 2%. Industry average for ADCs from Analog Devices ran between 0.3 and 0.8%. This lot failed at 26%. 312 units, dead on arrival or producing erratic voltage readings outside specification. Munoz pulled the purchase records. The chips had arrived through a distributor called Pacific Meridian Components, based in Irvine, California. Haldane had been buying from Pacific Meridian for 14 months. Munoz flagged the lot to his engineering director. Standard procedure would have been to issue a return authorization and source replacement units. But the failure rate was too extreme. A 26% defect rate didn't happen with legitimate semiconductor manufacturing. Not at this price point. Not from this manufacturer. The engineering director escalated to Haldane's compliance office. Compliance pulled purchase history for the previous 14 months. Pacific Meridian had supplied Haldane with over 43,000 components across 9 different chip families. Total procurement value, $2.1 million. Compliance selected samples from 6 previous shipments still in inventory. They sent them to an independent testing lab in Austin, Texas, for X-ray dye analysis. Dye analysis is the only reliable method for detecting high-quality counterfeits. It images the actual silicon inside the chip package, revealing whether the internal architecture matches the manufacturer's published dye photographs. The results came back on October 21st, 2025. Of the 6 lots tested, 4 contained counterfeit components. The fakes used recycled silicon from obsolete consumer-grade chips, reballed and repackaged in housings that perfectly replicated Analog Devices and Texas Instruments markings. The counterfeit packages were dimensionally identical. Pin-for-pin compatible, they passed basic electrical screening. They even carried correct date codes and lot numbers, but under X-ray the die told a different story. The silicon inside was wrong. Consumer-grade architecture in a package labeled for military-grade performance. The chips would function initially, then degrade unpredictably under thermal stress, vibration, or extended duty cycles. Exactly the conditions they would encounter inside a missile guidance system or a naval radar array. Haldane's compliance office contacted the Defense Criminal Investigative Service on October 23rd. DCIS opened a preliminary inquiry and within 48 hours referred the case to the United States Secret Service. That referral might seem unusual. Most people associate the Secret Service with presidential protection, but the agency was founded in 1865 with a single original mandate: combating counterfeiting. That jurisdiction extends beyond currency. The Secret Service maintains an electronic crimes task force with specialized authority over fraud involving counterfeit goods that threaten critical infrastructure. Fake semiconductors entering the defense supply chain fell squarely within that mandate. The case landed on the desk of Special Agent Christine Vasquez at the Secret Service field office in Birmingham, Alabama. Vasquez had spent 11 years investigating electronic crimes, including a 2022 case involving counterfeit Cisco networking equipment sold to federal agencies. She understood supply chain fraud. Her first move was to trace Pacific Meridian components. The company had been incorporated in California in March 2024. Its registered agent was a law firm in Newport Beach. Its physical address was a 3,000-square-foot office suite in an industrial park off the 405 freeway in Irvine. The company had a professional website, a GSA schedule number, and appeared in 3 federal procurement databases. On paper, Pacific Meridian looked legitimate. It listed partnerships with 6 major semiconductor manufacturers. It carried a DUNS number. It had a cage code registered with the Defense Logistics Agency. But Vasquez pulled the actual manufacturer authorization records. None existed. Pacific Meridian had never held authorized distribution agreements with Analog Devices, Texas Instruments, or any other manufacturer it claimed to represent. The GSA schedule number belonged to a different company that had gone dormant in 2021. Someone had simply copied it. Pacific Meridian was a shell. A sophisticated one, but a shell. Vasquez subpoenaed the company's banking records through the Central District of California. Between April 2024 and October 2025, Pacific Meridian had received $14.7 million in payments from 31 different customers: defense subcontractors, aerospace firms, medical device companies, 3 universities with Department of Defense research grants. The money moved out almost as fast as it came in. Wire transfers to 3 entities: Shenzhen Huacore Electronics, registered in Guangdong Province, China; MKS Trading Limited, registered in Hong Kong; and a company called Atlantic Gateway Logistics, based in Elizabeth, New Jersey. The Shenzhen connection established the source. Huacore Electronics operated from a factory complex in the Bao'an district, an area known for its concentration of semiconductor recycling and repackaging operations. Chinese customs records, obtained through a mutual legal assistance treaty request, showed Huacore had shipped 247 pallets of electronic components to the United States between January 2024 and September 2025. But those 247 pallets didn't arrive at Pacific Meridian's office in Irvine. They arrived at bonded warehouses. This is where the operation's real architecture became visible. Bonded warehouses operate under customs and border protection supervision. Imported goods can be stored in them without paying duties until they're released for domestic commerce. The system exists to facilitate legitimate trade. But it also creates a buffer, a zone where goods sit between the point of import and the point of sale, partially shielded from routine inspection. Atlantic Gateway Logistics controlled 6 bonded warehouses: 2 at the Port of Long Beach, California; 2 at Port Newark, New Jersey; 2 at the Port of Savannah, Georgia. The company had been incorporated in Delaware in January 2024, 3 months before Pacific Meridian began operations. The same person controlled both companies. His name was Raymond Kwok, 44 years old, a naturalized U.S. citizen born in Guangzhou, China. Kwok had a background in electronics distribution going back 15 years, no criminal record, 2 previous businesses, both dissolved voluntarily. He lived in a $2.8 million house in Short Hills, New Jersey. Kwok wasn't running this alone. Vasquez's financial analysis identified a second principal: Feng Frank Bai, age 51, a Chinese national holding a U.S. permanent resident card. Bai managed the logistics pipeline from the Shenzhen end. He traveled between Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and Newark on a near-monthly rotation. His phone records showed daily contact with Huacore Electronics and MKS Trading. If you're finding this investigation as layered as the supply chain it uncovered, hit subscribe. This case goes deeper than anyone expected. Vasquez now had the outlines of the scheme. Huacore in Shenzhen sourced recycled and remarked semiconductor dies. MKS Trading in Hong Kong handled export documentation, generating fraudulent certificates of conformance and manufacturer traceability records. Atlantic Gateway's bonded warehouses received the shipments in the U.S. Pacific Meridian, sold them to end customers as genuine components. 4 entities, 3 countries, a supply chain designed to make counterfeit chips indistinguishable from real ones at every administrative checkpoint. But Vasquez needed to understand the scale, and for that she needed customs and border protection. On November 3, 2025, the Secret Service formally requested CBP's participation through the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center. CBP assigned a team from the Trade Remedy and Law Enforcement Directorate. Their job: map every shipment that had entered Atlantic Gateway's 6 warehouses over the previous 20 months. CBP's trade data systems revealed the scope immediately. The 247 pallets from Huacore weren't the full picture. Atlantic Gateway had received shipments from 14 different Chinese and Hong Kong exporters. Total declared customs value: $38 million. But the components inside, once repackaged and sold as genuine military and aerospace-grade chips, carried a market value exceeding $410 million. The markup wasn't just profit, it was the difference between what a recycled consumer chip costs, sometimes less than $1, and what a genuine military specification component commands. Certain radiation-hardened chips used in satellite systems sell for $800 to $1,200 per unit. Atlantic Gateway was buying them for pennies and selling them for hundreds. CBP officers began controlled deliveries on November 5, 2025. A controlled delivery is an investigative technique where law enforcement allows a known illicit shipment to proceed through the supply chain under surveillance rather than seizing it at the border. The purpose is to document the full distribution network: who receives the goods, who repackages them, who sells them, and who buys them. Over the next 4 months, CBP monitored 11 separate shipments entering Atlantic Gateway's warehouses. They documented warehouse workers opening containers, sorting components by type, and applying new labels. In some cases, workers used heat guns to remove original manufacturer markings from recycled chips before applying counterfeit laser engravings. The repackaging operation at the Long Beach facility employed 9 full-time workers across 2 shifts. Surveillance cameras installed by CBP at the Newark and Long Beach facilities recorded over 4,200 hours of footage. The recordings captured Kwok personally inspecting shipments at the Newark facility on at least 7 occasions. Bai appeared at the Long Beach facility twice, both times arriving directly from LAX on flights from Hong Kong. While CBP tracked the physical supply chain, Vasquez's team followed the distribution network downstream. Pacific Meridian was the primary sales channel, but it wasn't the only one. The investigation identified 2 additional front companies pushing counterfeit components into the market: Semi-Source Direct, operating out of a virtual office in Dallas, Texas, and Pinnacle Micro Solutions, based in a strip mall in Duluth, Georgia. Both companies were controlled by associates of Kwok. Semi-Source Direct was managed by his brother-in-law James Leung, age 38. Pinnacle Micro was run by a former business partner named Victor Osei, age 46, a Ghanaian national on an expired H-1B visa. The 3 front companies had collectively sold counterfeit components to 74 customers in the United States. Vasquez's team confirmed at least 31 of those customers were defense-related. Components had entered supply chains feeding Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and L3 Harris. Not directly, but through the layered subcontractor ecosystem that characterizes defense procurement. A Tier 3 subcontractor buys from a distributor. The Tier 3 sells assemblies to a Tier 2. The Tier 2 integrates them into systems delivered to a prime contractor. Each layer adds distance between the counterfeit source and the end platform. That distance is the vulnerability, and it's by design. The defense semiconductor supply chain has a known weakness. Department of Defense Instruction 4140.67 requires counterfeit prevention measures, but enforcement falls on individual contractors. Testing requirements vary. Many subcontractors rely on visual inspection and basic electrical testing, methods that cannot detect high-quality counterfeits. X-ray dye analysis is definitive but expensive, often $50 to $200 per chip. On a production run of thousands of components, most subcontractors test a statistical sample, not every unit. Kwok's operation exploited this gap. The counterfeits were engineered to pass incoming inspection. They failed only under the specific stress conditions they would encounter in operational use: thermal cycling, vibration, radiation exposure. By the time they failed, they were inside deployed systems. The investigation's most alarming finding emerged on December 14, 2025. Vasquez's team, working with the Defense Contract Management Agency, identified counterfeit components that had already been installed in 3 active weapons programs. Specific details remain classified, but court filings reference guidance electronics for a precision munitions system, signal processing boards in a shipboard electronic warfare suite, and power regulation components in a military satellite constellation. None of these systems had experienced operational failures yet, but testing of pulled samples confirmed the counterfeits would degrade to failure within 18 to 36 months of deployment, depending on operational tempo. For a guided munition, that failure would occur at the worst possible moment, during flight. This finding changed the case. What had started as a counterfeiting investigation now carried national security implications. On December 19, 2025, the Secret Service briefed the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. The reason? Feng Bai's connections. Financial investigators had traced Bai's funding sources beyond MKS Trading. A significant portion of his operating capital, approximately $3.2 million over 2 years, had originated from Zhongxin United Trading Company, a firm based in Fujian Province with documented ties to the People's Liberation Army's Strategic Support Force. Zhongxin had been flagged in a 2023 Commerce Department entity list review, but had not been formally sanctioned. The question became, was this a profit-driven counterfeiting operation that happened to compromise defense systems? Or was it something else? Was the degradation of U.S. military components an unintended side effect, or was it the point? The FBI opened a parallel counterintelligence investigation. Its findings remain sealed. But what is publicly known is that Bai made 14 trips to Shenzhen during the operation's 20-month lifespan, and during at least 3 of those trips, he met with individuals the FBI subsequently identified as intelligence officers affiliated with the Ministry of State Security. Leave a comment below. Do you think this was purely criminal or something more? By January 2026, the investigation had reached a critical juncture. Vasquez and the CBP team had documented the full network. They had financial records, surveillance footage, controlled delivery evidence, and laboratory analysis confirming the counterfeits. The case was ready for prosecution, but every day the operation continued, more counterfeit components entered the supply chain. The Defense Department had begun quietly pulling suspect components from active systems, but it couldn't recall everything without alerting the targets. The investigation needed to end. The decision to execute simultaneous raids across 3 ports and 4 states required coordination at the highest level. The operation plan went through the Secret Service's Criminal Investigative Division in Washington, CBP's Office of Field Operations, and the U.S. Attorney's offices in the Central District of California, the District of New Jersey, and the Southern District of Georgia. The date was set, November 19, 2025, a Wednesday. Port operations would be at their lowest between 3 and 5 a.m. The element of surprise was critical, particularly at the Newark facility. Intelligence had identified a security concern at Warehouse 7C in Newark. Unlike the other 5 facilities, which relied on commercial alarm systems and padlocks, the Newark warehouse had been retrofitted. Reinforced steel doors, interior partitions creating a controlled entry point, and 3 private security guards employed by Kwok through a contractor, all of them armed. Vasquez's team didn't know why Newark had enhanced security. The other warehouses stored similar inventory. The working theory was that Newark served as the primary repackaging hub, where the most sophisticated counterfeiting equipment was located: laser engraving machines, precision label printers, and a climate-controlled room for reballing operations. The tactical plan allocated the most resources to Newark. A Secret Service SWAT team would breach the reinforced door using hydraulic spreading tools. CBP Special Response Team operators would secure the perimeter. FBI agents from the Newark field office would assist with arrests and evidence processing. The other 5 warehouses would be hit simultaneously by CBP SWAT teams supported by local law enforcement. In Long Beach, the Port Police Tactical Unit would participate. In Savannah, the Chatham County Sheriff's Office SWAT team. Total personnel across all 6 sites: 214 federal agents and 47 local law enforcement officers. November 19, 2025, 3:47 a.m. Eastern Time. At Port Newark, the lead SWAT element approached Warehouse 7C from the south side of the container yard. 3 armored Suburbans stopped 200 meters from the target. Agents deployed on foot. 2 snipers took positions on the roof of an adjacent warehouse with thermal imaging scopes. The entry team reached the main door at 3:51 a.m. The hydraulic spreader was positioned on the reinforced roll door. At 3:52 a.m., the tactical commander gave the execute order. The spreader cracked the door frame in 9 seconds. The door buckled inward. Flashbang grenades went through the gap. Inside, the 3 security guards were stationed at different points within the warehouse. One was in a small office near the entrance. The second was on the main warehouse floor. The third was in the repackaging room at the rear of the building. The guard in the office reached for a Glock 19 on the desk. He was on the ground with 2 agents on top of him before his hand closed around it. The second guard dropped to his knees and put his hands behind his head immediately. The third guard in the back room attempted to destroy evidence. He swept a laptop and 2 external hard drives off a workstation into a trash can and tried to ignite the contents with a lighter. Agents reached him in 11 seconds. The laptop was recovered. 1 hard drive sustained minor damage, but was later forensically imaged. The Newark warehouse was secured in 4 minutes and 18 seconds. 0 shots fired. 3 guards detained. Inside, agents found what the investigation had predicted and more. 14,000 trays of counterfeit components, organized by manufacturer and part number. 3 laser engraving stations capable of reproducing manufacturer logos and date codes with micron-level precision. A reballing station with solder paste, stencils, and a reflow oven for attaching new solder balls to recycled dies. And in a locked filing cabinet, paper records documenting shipments going back to the first month of operations. Simultaneously at 12:47 a.m. Pacific Time, CBP teams hit the 2 Long Beach warehouses. Warehouse LB-14 was a standard bonded storage facility. The door was padlocked. CBP officers cut the lock and entered without resistance. Inside, 8,200 trays of components and shipping records linking the facility to Huacore Electronics. Warehouse LB-22, half a mile away, was the West Coast Repackaging Center. 9 workers were present, conducting a late-night shift to process a recently arrived container. All 9 were detained without incident. Equipment seized included industrial-grade microscopes, UV inspection lamps for verifying counterfeit date codes, and 340 kilograms of empty component packaging. The tubes, trays, and reels that give counterfeit chips the appearance of factory-fresh merchandise. In Savannah, the 2 warehouses were smaller operations, primarily serving as overflow storage and regional distribution points. CBP teams entered both facilities within 3 minutes of each other. No personnel were present. Agents recovered 4,600 trays of components and a desktop computer containing inventory management software. While the warehouses were being raided, arrest teams moved on the principals. Raymond Kwok was taken into custody at his home in Short Hills, New Jersey, at 4:14 a.m. He answered the door in a bathrobe. Agents executed a search warrant on the residence and seized 2 personal laptops, a tablet, 4 mobile phones, and financial documents stored in a home office safe. The safe also contained $340,000 in cash and 3 Rolex watches. James Leung was arrested at his apartment in Dallas at 3:19 a.m. Central Time. Victor Osi was detained at a motel in Norcross, Georgia at 4:22 a.m. Eastern. Fung Bai was not in the United States. Customs records showed Bai had departed Newark Liberty International Airport on November 14th, 5 days before the raids, on a Cathay Pacific flight to Hong Kong. Whether he had been tipped off or whether the timing was coincidental remained unclear. An Interpol Red Notice was issued on November 20th. As of March 2026, Bai has not been located. Chinese authorities have not responded to extradition requests. That's one open thread. There are others. Across all 6 warehouses, the total seized inventory comprised approximately 3.4 million individual counterfeit semiconductor components. The Secret Service assessed their combined market value, if sold as genuine, at $410 million. The actual cost of manufacturing the counterfeits was estimated at $6 to $9 million. The profit margin on this operation exceeded 4,000%. 26 individuals were arrested across 4 states in the initial sweep. Kwok, Leung, Osei, the 3 Newark security guards, the 9 Long Beach warehouse workers, and 13 additional associates identified through phone records and financial analysis. The associates included freight forwarders, customs brokers, and 2 employees of a legitimate testing laboratory in San Jose, who had been paid to issue false test reports certifying counterfeit components as genuine. Those 2 lab employees, both electrical engineers, had received a combined $280,000 in payments from Pacific Meridian over 11 months. Their fraudulent certifications had given counterfeit chips a veneer of legitimacy that allowed them to pass through defense contractor incoming inspection processes. Federal prosecutors in New Jersey filed the lead indictment on December 3, 2025. The charges: conspiracy to traffic in counterfeit goods, wire fraud, smuggling, and conspiracy to defraud the United States. The New Jersey indictment named Kwok, Bai, Leung, and Osei as principal defendants. A superseding indictment filed in February 2026 added charges of economic espionage for Bai, based on the FBI counterintelligence findings. Kwok's defense attorney entered a not guilty plea on December 10th. Bail was set at $5 million, secured by the Short Hills residence. Kwok posted bail. He is currently under house arrest with GPS monitoring, awaiting trial scheduled for September 2026. Leung cooperated with prosecutors within 72 hours of his arrest. He entered a plea agreement in January 2026, pleading guilty to conspiracy to traffic in counterfeit goods and wire fraud. His cooperation provided investigators with detailed information about the operation's internal communications, including encrypted messaging channels on WeChat and Telegram that had not been captured through earlier surveillance. Osei, facing additional immigration charges due to his expired visa status, also agreed to cooperate. His testimony corroborated Leung's account and provided additional detail about the Savannah distribution network. The downstream cleanup was enormous. The Defense Contract Management Agency initiated a government-wide recall of suspect components. 31 defense subcontractors received stop work orders pending component verification. The cost of testing and replacing potentially counterfeit chips across affected programs was estimated at $180 million by the Government Accountability Office in a preliminary assessment published in February 2026. 3 weapons programs underwent emergency component reviews. Some details remain classified, but the Department of Defense confirmed that counterfeit components were identified and removed from at least 2 deployed platforms before operational failure occurred. How many counterfeit chips remain undetected in systems already fielded is a question no one has been able to answer with certainty. The investigation also exposed structural vulnerabilities that extend far beyond this single case. The Government Accountability Office report noted that the Department of Defense has no centralized system for tracking component authenticity across its supply chain. Individual contractors maintain their own records, but there is no common database that would allow a failure at one contractor to trigger alerts across the entire defense industrial base. The bonded warehouse system, designed to facilitate international trade, provided the operation with a staging area inside U.S. territory where goods could be stored, repackaged, and relabeled with minimal oversight. CBP conducts physical inspections on approximately 3 to 5% of incoming commercial shipments. The counterfeits entered the country in containers declared as electronic components, a category so broad and high volume that individual inspection was statistically improbable. After the arrests, CBP implemented enhanced screening protocols for semiconductor shipments from certain Chinese port cities, but the fundamental math remains unchanged. Millions of containers enter the United States annually. The resources to inspect them all do not exist. There is one more detail from the investigation that has not been fully explained. During the forensic analysis of the laptop recovered from the Newark repackaging room, Secret Service digital forensics examiners found a file directory containing detailed specifications for 23 military-grade semiconductor components. Not the consumer-grade chips being counterfeited, but the actual classified specifications of the genuine military components they were designed to replace. Those specifications included die layouts, electrical performance parameters, and testing protocols. Some of that information is controlled under international traffic and arms regulations. It should not have been accessible to anyone outside a cleared defense contractor facility. How those specifications reached a laptop in a counterfeit chip warehouse in Newark, New Jersey, is the subject of an ongoing investigation. No public explanation has been provided. The FBI counterintelligence probe into Bai's connections to Zhongshin United Trading and the Ministry of State Security may eventually produce answers, or it may not. Kwok's trial is set for September 2026. Bai remains at large. Zhongshin United Trading continues to operate. Huacore Electronics' Shenzhen factory was raided by Chinese police in January 2026 at the request of the U.S. government through diplomatic channels, but Chinese authorities reported finding the facility vacated when officers arrived. The equipment had been removed. The workers were gone. The $410 million in seized inventory sits in federal evidence warehouses. It will eventually be destroyed. The $180 million cleanup bill will be absorbed by defense contractors and ultimately by taxpayers. The components already installed in systems around the world, the ones that weren't caught, will continue to operate until they don't. Operation Silicon Mirage dismantled one network. The Department of Commerce estimates that counterfeit electronic components represent a $75 billion annual global market. The demand for cheap semiconductors in an era of chip shortages and constrained supply chains has not diminished. If anything, it has grown. The network is gone. The vulnerability it exploited remains.